women, by and large, are significantly inferior to men at firefighting. Wah! I see I know this is pretty radical thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Fembots can essentially kiss my ass. Progressivism is a societal cancer. If you don't like it, Tumblr is that way. Hello everyone, welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Okay, let's talk about this Bucharest mosque business. If you've been following the news in this area of the world lately, you probably know that the Turkish state plans to build a mega-mosque right in the middle of Bucharest. The initial report stated that it would be the largest mosque in Europe, but that's an exaggeration, although it would still be amongst the top 5 largest ones. The Turkish press emphasizes that it's a deal that involves a reciprocal gesture of building an Orthodox Christian church in Istanbul, or as I'd like to call it, Constantinople. Quite frankly, I'd rather see Hagia Sophia return to Christian influence rather than have another Orthodox kitsch being built that no one gives a toss about. But I don't want to necessarily talk about this project from a religious perspective, but rather from a practical, pragmatic, political and historical perspective. So let's start with the politics. This project is not a new one. It has been under the discussion for at least 3 years, but most people don't know about it because the political class kept it quiet. That doesn't mean that the idea was secret, because it wasn't, but it does mean that only those with the time, commitment and energy could have learned the details of it. More to the point, the original idea wasn't to have a mega-mosque, and it was to be led by the Mufti of the Islamic cult in Romania, a man named Yusuf Murat. Now, the thing is, Yusuf Murat used to be at the time, and still is to a certain extent, a highly appreciated personality for his moderation and for the fact that he himself alerted the Romanian authorities in the last year about Saudi infiltration, and his intel turned out to be legit, and the kebab agitators have been duly expelled and banned from the European Union. Yes, we're not nice people here. We actually physically remove Islamic agitators and hate preachers the second we get them, and we don't care if the EU thinks we're racist when we use deportation. It's actually nice not to be in the Schengen area. Anyway, the thing is that this highly respected Mufti, Yusuf Murat, has changed the tune in the last year. Whilst in the past he would openly denounce the departing from the Kemal Atatürk's secular principles in the Erdogan administration, he lately backed down from criticizing the sultanic aspiration of Recep Erdogan, the current leader of Turkey. And that's a problem. You see, the current administration of Turkey is as far as possible from the original intents of modern Turkey, founded by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. For starters, Erdogan banned people's access to social media, particularly Twitter, during last year's protest, alleging, quote, a Western-led robot lobby on social media against him and his administration, and defining social media as, quote, the worst menace to society. This was something unthinkable merely 10 years ago in Turkey. In March 2014, he said, we'll eradicate Twitter. I don't care what the international community says. Everyone will witness the power of the Turkish Republic. He then moved on to depart even further from the free and secularist view of Turkey on which the country was founded. Mr. Erdogan is on the record for saying that, quote, the mosques are our barracks, the domes our helmets, the minarets our bayonets, and the faithful our soldiers. And also that there is no moderate or immoderate Islam. Islam is Islam, and that's it. Such statements are to be expected from, Ayatollah Khomeini or Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, but not from the leader of secular Turkey. Given this reality, the Romanian Mufti's decision to backpedal on Erdogan's outrageousness is questionable at the very least. In this context, last month, Romania's Prime Minister, the socialist Victor Ponta, approved the project and through executive order effectively donated to the Turkish government exactly 11,295 square meters of land very close to the center of the capital city, Bucharest. The actual construction is to be funded by the Turkish government, and the appointment of imams is also to be done through the institution called Diyanet İşleri Başkanlığı, which is the Presidency of Religious Affairs, an institution subordinated directly to Recep Erdogan. On the other hand, the Islamic center around the mosque is to be led by the local mufti. Given that the Turkish leader made no secret of his intention to transform Turkey from a secularized modern society back into an Islamic hellhole, and even called his policy neo-Ottomanism, this is cause for concern. And it's an apt description because the Erdogan administration has made efforts to intervene in every country that was once in some sort of relationship with the old Ottoman Empire. And I'll explain the relationship of the Romanian territories with the Ottomans in a few minutes. From a practical perspective, the project makes no sense whatsoever, and it's actually a menace. The historical Muslim minority in Romania, of Tatar and Turkish ethnic origin, is largely concentrated in the area close to the Black Sea, not in Bucharest. The few Muslims that do reside in Bucharest are very well served by the already existing praying centers. The historical Muslim minority in Romania is one example of multiculturalism that can actually work. There has never been an interethnic conflict between Romanians and the Muslim Turks or Tatars in the southeast. On the contrary, there is an impeccable 200 years track record of peaceful collaboration between Christians and Muslims, including the two groups building praying centers for one another. The last such instance was the Muslim community building an Orthodox church because the communist state had taken down the old one under the megalomaniac project of Ceausescu to wipe out churches. This is one of the reasons why many in the Muslim community in Romania are astonished by this project and lean towards disagreeing with it, because they rightfully see it as a project that could shatter the historical understanding between Romanians and the Muslim Turkish minority in here. More to the point, there is no reason why we should allow calls for prayers that would cover the entire center of the capital city. Take a look at this short clip of a call for prayer taped at the mosque in Hamburg, which is smaller than the one planned to be built in Bucharest. Are we clear? In order to get to make this noise once a year, one now needs a plethora of permits and assurances and so on. Hell, holding an open-air concert in there is quite a monumental task from a bureaucratic standpoint. Yet with the Mega-mosque, such shouting would occur multiple times a day. Why? For the sake of having the Patriarch erect a church in Istanbul? Am I the only one who thinks this is nuts? And this is how we reach to the pragmatic perspective. We know that the imams shall be appointed by Erdogan, and we know for a fact that Erdogan subscribes to the neo-Ottomanist ideology. We also know that Turkey is aiding Daesh, or the Islamic State, from the back door, Turkey's border with Daesh being anything but secure, which means that those maniacs can freely transport merchandise and people into and from the Islamic State territory. Additionally, we know for a fact that Erdogan is getting desperate to build new mosques into Europe because the small window of tolerance is closing, with Austria already banning foreign funding religious organizations, and with Finland, Germany, Switzerland, Italy and Hungary looking increasingly closer to adopt similar legislation. Knowing all these realities, it makes sense for Erdogan to try to exploit the historical understanding between Christians and Muslims that exists in Romania. But this may also backfire. An online poll in which almost 10,000 people voted revealed an over 92% disapproval. To my total amazement, even neo-fascist organizations such as the New Right issued a balanced opposition to the project, in which it also included a firm support for the Turkish minority and praising the fact that it never demanded autonomy and respected the unity of the nation. So it would appear that the opposition is quite clear. Yet, who wants the project? Well, just like everywhere else, a minuscule but vocal segment of the middle-class left-wing pricks in the cathedral media, doubled by the Istanbul-paid Muslim activists, and, without any sense of irony, a segment of the militant atheists. The influential journalist Lucian Mândruță, who was instrumental in getting the social media going to prevent the socialists from gaining presidency and full power in the state last November, wrote a piece in which he argued something like this. And I'm going to try to represent his argument as best as I can for those of you who don't speak Romanian. Those of you who do, you can go read it yourself, link in the low bar. So, Mendoza essentially says that the toxic elements of the Islamist problem don't come from our local historical minority or from the Turks in general, but rather from those coming from Wahhabi areas such as Saudi Arabia or Qatar, who tend to live in Bucharest. As such, Mendoza argues it's better to have those elements under a moderate administration of our local mufti than for them to practice Islam in dubious corners where they could be subjected to radicalization. He cites the fact that I mentioned earlier as well, namely that our local Turkish community already helped the authorities to apprehend radical Muslims, which were subsequently deported and banned from entering the European Union. And whoever disagrees with Mendoza is labeled as, you guessed it, a racist, a demagogue, and an intolerant. Well, I will disagree with this narrative, and I don't care who I offend. What Lucian Mendoza says is not technically incorrect, it's just incomplete. Yes, our local Muslim minority is indeed peaceful and nobody has a beef with them. Heck, even the fascists like them. But this mosque and its surrounding cultural center will not be led by this community, but by an individual who subscribes, in his own words, to a neo-Ottomanist worldview. More to the point, the local moderate Mufti Yusuf Murat barely won the elections for the Mufti position earlier this year against a radical foreign-educated candidate, and he already announced that he won't run for re-elections next time around. In plain English, as of 2020, there's open season to get a Saudi Mufti. Or, why not, a Mufti educated by Daesh? Do we really want a Daesh-educated Mufti to lead one of the largest Islamic centers in Europe? I would argue that we're not out of our freaking minds. Other idiots, such as those writing for one of the most cancerous rag in the Romanian media, namely Vice Romania, openly support the project just to piss off the right people, showing a complete lack of understanding of anything beyond their piss matches with Christians online. Sadly, most of my fellow atheists fall on the same side of the fence too, and seem to be completely oblivious to the fact that Orthodox Christians would, at worst, curse you online or forbid your access in one of their churches, where you shouldn't go in the first place anyway. On the other hand, Daesh-educated Muslims will behead you if you dare to offend their prophet. The internet is still relatively free, so don't trust me, just look around the web yourself. London just commemorated the 10th anniversary from the 7/7 bombings. Do we want a 7/7 10 years from now in the Bucharest subway? And before accusing me of fear-mongering and extremism, just check how the Brits were thinking of allowing madrasas on their soil 10 or 20 years ago. Same thing, the common man was reluctant whilst the media class was in eager support. One would have to be horrifyingly ignorant to assert that this can't happen here just because the cult is led temporarily by a moderate. Yusuf Murat is not eternal. He'll be gone in 5 short years. Erdogan, however, will wield influence for at least another decade, and he's unlikely to drop his neo-Ottomanist agenda. And finally, let's talk about the historical perspective a bit too. Back in the Middle Ages, the relationship of the Romanian territories with the Ottoman Empire bounced around between Dar al-Ahd, that is the House of Peace, and Dar al-Harb, the House of War. The third state would have been Dar al-Islam, which meant that the nation was Islamized. The Romanian territories were never Islamized, as opposed to modern-day Albania, which turned out in that period from an Orthodox Christian country into an Islamic nation. The 3 provinces, Moldova, Wallachia, and Transylvania, were largely under Dar al-Ahd regime, which meant that they were autonomous, the ruler was always a local prince, and the traditional political, administrative, military, judiciary, and ecclesiastic institutions were to be preserved as they were. During peacetime, namely during the Dar al-Ahd state, the ruler was to be elected by the boyars and confirmed by the Sultan, which at first was a mere rubber stamp. However, in time, especially during Mohammed II, the Ottoman Empire started to break this tradition and attempted to impose its rulers without regard for the boyar's opinion. And the ruler role was usually given to the one who paid the most. This often led to war against the Ottoman Empire, sometimes successful for us and sometimes successful for the Turks. Obviously, the Turks won more often. This was largely in the Ottoman tradition in the second part of the second millennium, namely to have the empire as a business. The Sultan was more content to receive money for both approving the prince and tribute from the nations than to fight long wars in an attempt to Islamize a population that was willing to rise in full against it. The tradition became even more entrenched after the rule of Vlad Dracul III, commonly known as Vlad the Impaler, who essentially made the cost of war higher for the Ottomans. Anyway, the relevant part for this talk is that the autonomy of the Romanian territories was also recognized through the orders issued by the Sultan, orders which forbade Muslims to own properties, erect mosques, or recruit men for the Ottoman army in the suzerain territories, which included not only modern-day Romania, but also modern-day Hungary, portions of modern-day Ukraine, and modern-day Serbia. So even during the Ottoman Empire, building mega-mosques in this space was forbidden, by the Sultan, no less. And here we are. 600 years later, we now have a political class and a bunch of idiots in the media openly wanting to allow one to be built with foreign financing and influence. This is utter madness. Something needs to be done. Share this video around, and if you're in Europe, talk with your friends and family. Both on the ground and international pressure needs to be placed on the current government in Bucharest, which, in my view, is now acting against the people. I'm confident that this project can be defeated because there are strong opponents, starting from the former president, the Center for Combating Anti-Semitism, and right across every sane sector of the society. It will be a battle of ideas between most of the people and an oblivious minority of individuals who temporarily hold some power and who utterly lack long-term vision. If we lose the war of ideas, don't be surprised if you don't recognize Bucharest by 2025. Anyway, with that being said, don't forget to click the subscribe button, follow me on Twitter @FreedomAlternat, and consider supporting this channel. Thanks for watching.